moved to a few different cities, first London, then to Hong Kong, and eventually back to Singapore. And you became a managing partner.
Not on day one.
Not on day one. Did you ever envision that you would come this far?
I didn't know. Having done corporate work before I evolved into a tax lawyer, actually been highly beneficial. Not every lawyer receives official gifts from foreign governments.
For sure. This is quite rare. Hi everyone, welcome back to Dentons Rodyk On-Air, where we speak to some of our lawyers to find out more about their personal and work life. So today we have Edmund with us, and we will be speaking to Edmund to find out a little more about his journey. So Edmund, can you introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Edmund Leow. I'm a senior partner. I head the tax and trust and wealth management practice.
So maybe let's start from the very beginning. You are actually a first-generation lawyer.
Yes, my parents were not lawyers.
Your parents were not.
I do have an elder brother who was a lawyer previously.
Then understanding that, your family, you didn't come from a family of lawyers, what was the motivation behind joining law and studying law?
I found law interesting when I was in school. So when I was in school, I read widely, and law was just one of the topics that I happened to stumble on, and I found it quite interesting. And I would read about it. I borrow books from the National Library and read about it. And as I found it interesting, I read more and more. So maybe when I was doing my O levels or A levels, then that's the time when I thought law would be an interesting course to study at university.
So that's how you decided to pursue law at university,
Yes.
right? And you studied your university overseas?
Yes, I was at Cambridge. So that was after my NS.
So you were studying in the UK, and then you decided to stay on in the UK and to work in London.
Yes. So at that point, when I graduated, of course, I had to decide where to go after that. And I thought that it would be useful to get some working experience in London before coming back home. So at that point, I started applying to law firms in London, and of course, I was accepted at Baker McKenzie. So that's where I started. So I started at Baker London as a trainee.
So you trained in Baker London, and as we understand, you moved to a few different cities. So it was first London, and then you went to Hong Kong, and eventually back to Singapore. Can you maybe give us, some idea as to why you moved across these different cities?
Yes. So I was always intending to come back eventually. But I also thought that, it wasn't necessary to come back right away. So I started off working in London first. After a few years in London, I decided I wanted to make a move. But at that point, I spoke to some of my bosses, and they thought it would be interesting for me to get some experience of Hong Kong as well. So I shifted to Baker, Hong Kong. I was there for a year altogether. Originally, I intended to stay longer in Hong Kong, but at that point, my wife and I decided to start a family. And of course, when you make a decision like that, then you have to consider also, where is a good place to bring up children? And I think most people would agree that Singapore is probably a better place to bring up children than Hong Kong. So after a year, we came back to Singapore.
I see. So actually you have a very unique experience of working in 3 jurisdictions. That's UK, Hong Kong, and Singapore. But maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the law in these 3 cities. Are they similar, or are they actually very different?
Yeah, well, I mean, one fortunate thing is that the laws are quite similar. Obviously, all 3 are common law jurisdictions. Of course, England is the origin of the common law.
Yes.
Singapore, of course, is also a common law system because we were a British colony, and so was Hong Kong, right? In fact, when I arrived in Hong Kong, it was still a colony. So in other words, the Hong Kong that I worked in is actually quite different from the Hong Kong today.
I see.
So it was still a British colony then, and of course by then I was qualified in England already, And as an English solicitor, I managed to get automatic admission in Hong Kong without doing much because, well, it was a colony, right?
So you were also admitted in Hong Kong as well as a
Yes,
lawyer.
yes, yes. That's one of the reasons why I went there, right? I knew it was easy to get admitted precisely because Hong Kong was still a British colony then. So I just arrived and I presented myself in court and got admitted just like that by a British judge, of course.
Wow. that
So
seems very
it looked
seamless.
exactly like London. I mean, in that sense.
I see. And you know, the law that you practice, it's also very similar to the way you practiced in London. I'm thinking case
Yes,
law and everything.
yes,
It would
yes,
be
yes, exactly. Because as a British colony, of course, they followed common law. In fact, they still do today. But certainly at that time they did, and you know, statutes, cases, you know, very similar to what you have in England. Of course, the difference is the business environment, because the
okay.
business environment is very Chinese. Right?
see.
The law is the same,
Right.
but the business environment is very Chinese, and so the learning experience really is not so much the law itself, but it is more, you know, how business is done, because obviously we are advising clients who are doing business, and so therefore, you know, how to deal with clients of different types of clients from China, clients from Hong Kong, you know, so that's where the learning process was. And then eventually, of course, I came back to Singapore. Well, I'm Singaporean, so that's my home.
Yes.
So it's again, the law is similar. The law has always been similar, I guess, because of Singapore's history. But again, the business environment is a bit different, and so each place teaches you different things.
So you mentioned about the different business environment in
Yes.
London, Hong Kong, and Singapore. I mean, I think we would be interested to find out, you know, how exactly is it different? Maybe it could be the kind of clients that you are serving. Maybe in London, was it more international? Whereas in Hong Kong, maybe it was more Asia-centric?
Well, of course, when I first came back to Singapore, I was still at Baker, so it was the same firm. Now that obviously provides some comfort because I know how the firm works, I know the systems, and in fact, some of the clients were the same, meaning that Baker, as an international firm, would often serve large multinationals in many different jurisdictions.
Right.
So in fact, in some situations, I ended up, you know, working with the same clients in all three jurisdictions.
Wow. So not much change there, you know, in
Yeah,
terms
but
of
of
clients.
course, in each jurisdiction there are, you know, there are local clients. So that's where the difference comes. But you know, it was a very good experience and very good learning experience. And being in the same firm, there's a familiarity with the firm. You know, there's a familiarity with the people. Sometimes I work with the same people, right? Because the work generally is cross-border, so you may end up working with the same clients, you know, the same partners maybe, but of course, you start off in London where you are handling the English law aspects of it, and then when you move to Hong Kong, you are handling the Hong Kong law aspects of it, and then you come back to Singapore and you're handling the Singapore law aspects of it.
I see. So there is still some familiarity, but
Yes.
when you move from different offices, you kind of wear on a different cap every time. You know,
Yes.
you think from the UK law perspective, then you change.
Exactly.
I see.
And in a way that helps us to develop a cross-border perspective because you can see the different perspectives.
Now that we've heard, you know, your experience and journey moving across the different cities, you eventually came back to Singapore and you became a managing partner of the Singapore Baker office.
Not on day one.
Not on day one.
You don't start off as managing partner.
Well, after many years.
Yes, but I was one of the founders of the Baker Singapore practice.
Okay.
When I first came back to Singapore, there was no local practice. So the Baker Singapore office was the Singapore office of a foreign law firm. And there was no Singapore practice at that point.
Right. That means that the firm couldn't practice Singapore law.
Yes, exactly.
It was a foreign law firm.
Yes.
So
yes.
when you came over to Singapore, you helped to found the Singapore law firm, which merged with the international brand?
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, when I first came back to Singapore, because Baker Singapore was still a foreign law firm, I was actually the only Singaporean in the office.
Oh,
So all the other lawyers were expats.
I see.
And I was the one who was most unhappy with the situation because I'm a Singaporean, I'm a lawyer, but not a Singapore lawyer.
Ah, because you were UK qualified, you were Hong
Yes,
Kong
yes,
qualified, but not
yes.
Singapore
I wasn't happy at all.
qualified. Okay.
And at that point, I went to talk to my bosses and I said, hey, look, I'm not going to spend my whole career doing this, okay? I don't want to sit in my own country practicing the laws of other jurisdictions but not my own. I mean, that's a totally ridiculous situation to be in. And they agreed. So we came up with a plan to eventually become local. And of course, that meant that a few of us had to get admitted in Singapore. But after getting admitted in Singapore, then we started a Singapore law firm, right? A Singapore law firm to work with the Baker Singapore office. And that Singapore law firm is Wong and Leow.
I see. So that
So I was one of the
how-
founders of that. And that firm's still there, by the way. Still there and still bears that name. So the name has not changed. The original founding partners have both left the firm by now.
the Wong and the Liao.
The Wong, of course, didn't leave. I mean, remained there. But I mean, he has since retired. And in my case, of course, I became managing partner in Baker Singapore. But of course, eventually I left, and I think that's the next topic of our discussion.
Yes. So maybe before we move on to talk about the next phase of your career, just just a question for you. You started off working as a trainee in Baker in London, and then you've come so far to eventually becoming managing partner of the Singapore office. Looking back as a trainee, did you ever envision that you would come this far?
I didn't know, but well, as I said, I studied law because I found law interesting. When I started practicing, I still continued to find it interesting. So there was no reason to leave. So, I mean, I didn't know at that time, I mean, how far I would go. So I just move along and let things go, and that's how it ended up. But I suppose no one could have predicted these things. And obviously, I think I'm lucky.
I guess my next question would be, what do you think played the biggest role in your journey from trainee, moving across different offices, and finally becoming managing partner? Because I'm sure there are prospective young lawyers out there who are thinking the same thing, like how can I climb the ladder? How can I be outstanding in this way? So what do you think contributed the most to your success?
Yeah, I mean, I see lots of young lawyers these days, and I know that many young lawyers leave the profession after a while. I mean, that's one of the hot topics
Yes.
that is being discussed in the legal profession these days.
Yep.
And I guess my experience is very different because, I saw no reason to leave. I would have stayed on until today if I hadn't been asked to serve on the bench. Right? I mean, if that had not happened, I would probably still be at Baker today because there was no reason to leave. I mean, I was happy doing what I was doing. The work was interesting, and I thought that clients appreciated the work I was doing. They appreciated my advice. The issues we were dealing with were very interesting, and helping clients to solve their problems, I think, is quite meaningful to me. So because of that, I really saw no reason to leave. So I guess young lawyers are always looking for new experiences. Maybe that's the reason why they leave. But I suppose I was actually quite happy where I was. And of course, as you continue and you get more and more senior, you become more and more efficient. in doing your work. So in fact, I guess if you ask me for one piece of advice for young lawyers, I would say, well, if you are thinking of leaving, bear in mind that, when you leave, wherever you go, you probably have to start from scratch all over again. And your previous experience may not be very useful to you in the new job, right? Doing new work, facing new issues. Whereas my experience was, because I continued doing what I was doing for a long time, I got better and better at it. And as I got better and better at it, I've also found it more and more enjoyable. So actually my experience is the opposite.
Yes.
In others, my experience gets better and better, not worse and worse.
Right. And I think that's very hopeful for a lot of, lawyers to hear, because I guess maybe at the beginning stages of being a lawyer, it might be the hardest part.
Yes.
You do the brunt work,
Yes.
steep learning curve, and so on.
Yes, I agree. I think the beginning, for most young lawyers, I suspect the beginning is the hardest. Because you're struggling, right? You're not familiar. And there are lots of things you don't know.
Yeah.
And you're wondering, I don't know how to do this, I don't know how to do that, better quit, right? Because I'm struggling. But of course, as I said just now, if you keep at it, you learn, you get better and better at it, right? Then all the things that you didn't know how to do, you eventually learn how to do, right? Then you'll be more efficient, you're doing it better. And of course, as you do it better, then you will be appreciated more by your clients and your bosses. And hopefully life will get better rather than worse. And I think as time goes along, you get better and better at it, your life gets better and better. So I think, take a long-term perspective, in other words.
Yep.
It will get better.
It will get better. That's a good piece of advice for our lawyers out there. You mentioned that, being a trainee is the hardest stage. Did you experience that as well? Was it also difficult for you, challenging as a trainee?
Yes. I think I definitely did find that as well, but I'm happy I didn't leave, because the longer you do it, the better you are at the work, right? And in a way, looking at it from the other perspective, when people leave, sometimes I say to them, look, it's sad that you're leaving, because all that you've learned here is lost. Your experience is lost. Because when you go and find a new job somewhere else, doing something very different, especially if you're doing something which is very different, then you will find that your experience is useless. Your previous experience is useless. And that to me is very sad, because actually your previous experience could potentially be very valuable, right? Because experienced lawyers do things differently from fresh lawyers. And so you actually learn a lot already. But because you're moving to a totally new job, this knowledge and this experience is wasted.
I completely understand where you're coming from, because, as the trainee in the team, I feel like sometimes I'm out of my depth.
Yes.
There's so many unfamiliar
Yes.
concepts. I cannot even begin to understand maybe the opinions, and it takes me a lot of time to go through and understand them, right? But when I work with senior lawyers like yourself, I see that you can pick out issues very easily, and you're able to understand
Yes.
the complexities that are in the issues that, maybe as younger lawyers we're not so aware about.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that does give me hope that the longer you are in a career, the more experience you get, the easier it will be for you, and you just get better at it.
Yeah, that's certainly been my experience, and I would guess that even at your level as a trainee, with each matter, you're learning more and more.
Yes, that's
So
right.
when you come back to a new matter which raises the same issues,
Yes.
you will know how to deal with them.
Yes, that's very true. When I was doing my RLT with a firm last year, I recall very specifically, at the beginning I had no clue what was the
Yes.
tax advice we were giving. And then at the end of the RLT, after 6 months, I came back to a similar issue, and I looked at an opinion, and I understood.
Yes.
I could grasp the knowledge, and I thought that ability to learn and grow during that period of time was very meaningful for me.
Yeah, because, well, obviously in our team, we are tax lawyers, right? But someone coming in fresh from law school may not even know what a tax lawyer is,
That's
because tax is a niche area in the legal profession.
It
right?
is.
The vast majority of lawyers don't do tax. So many students in law school don't even know what a tax lawyer is.
I don't even think it's a compulsory subject.
No,
so
it's not. It's
very
not.
few people have exposure to our practice area.
Yes. But after having spent a few months here, I think you know what a tax lawyer is.
I do. But more to learn, of course. More
Yes.
to learn.
Yes.
Well, we talk about how your interest in this practice area has grown over time, and I think that's a very important factor that's kept you in this career and in this practice area, because it seems like you found something that interests you, and the longer you are in this space, the better you are at it. So we talk about how maybe attrition rate is a big topic in the legal industry.
Yes.
And that could be because some lawyers may not have found something that interests them as much. So devoting that time
Yes.
seems like kind of like a waste of time. Maybe I should go and find my true passion. I think
Right.
that could be the
Right.
mentality behind why we have a lot of lawyers leaving the industry. But you've managed to find the fun in this
Yes.
practice area.
Yes. Well, that is true. I must say that it is something I picked up on the job, because although I was interested in law originally, that's why I went to law school in the first place, I wasn't a tax lawyer on day one.
Oh,
I mean, on day one, when I first joined as a trainee, I was doing general corporate work. Now, general corporate work is fairly interesting, but I found a particular aspect of the work particularly interesting, and that's tax. Because what I found is that in all the corporate work that I was doing, there were always tax issues coming up. And sometimes in those days, of course, I would go and consult the tax lawyers in the firm, right? And the more I consulted them, the more I learned from them. And after a while, I thought to myself, well, this is actually quite interesting. And eventually, I decided to become a tax lawyer myself. So in other words, I phased out my corporate work
right.
and essentially evolved towards being a tax lawyer.
Yeah.
So eventually, I became a tax specialist. And at that point in time, I would say to my colleagues, well, I have turned my hobby into my job.
Wow.
Because at that point, I said, tax used to be my hobby. It was my hobby because I was doing corporate work. And then when tax issues arise in the corporate work, I found it so interesting that instead of consulting the tax lawyers, I would figure out the answer myself.
You would do the research.
I would do the reading to find out the answer myself. So that's my hobby.
Wow.
And then one day I decided, let's turn my hobby into my regular job.
I see. So it was like a path of discovery for you. You didn't start out, in the practice area that,
Yes,
you
correct.
would go to it seems like you took kind of like the longer route.
Yes, I took the longer route, but there's also, a bright side to it, in the sense that having done corporate work for several years before I evolved into a tax lawyer, that gives me a lot of other experiences, which have actually been highly beneficial, because when I'm advising, for example, on an M&A deal, now that I'm a tax lawyer, I'm advising on the tax aspects of the M&A deal. I'm advising clients how to structure the deal, right? But because I've also done the corporate side of M&A, I know how an M&A deal is done.
Yes.
So therefore, I know what the issues are, and I know which aspects I should handle and which aspects I should leave to the
M&A
transaction lawyers. Exactly.
Okay.
And I can work with them quite well because I know what's involved. I know what's involved. I know how deals are negotiated. I know how sale and purchase agreements are drafted. And I know what the main issues are. So because of that, I'm covering one aspect of it, but knowing the overall picture means that I can be a lot more effective. And I'm particularly effective, I suppose, when I'm drafting tax clauses in the sale and purchase agreement, and I know where my clause fits into the rest of the agreement.
Right.
So that's something which we can do, which not every lawyer can.
And I think that's because your experience in corporate, in general corporate, has allowed you to have that big picture view
Yes.
of the transactions, so that when you narrow down into the tax issues, you can consider it very holistically against
Yes.
the background
Yes.
that is the transaction.
Yeah, and if in the middle of the middle of the negotiation, something happens, as a tax lawyer, I can then say, oh, look, because of this new fact, let's change the whole structure and do something else.
Wow.
Instead of acquiring the property itself, you acquire the holding company instead.
Right.
The holding company which owns the property. Things like that. We are always adaptable. And you can only be adaptable if you understand the whole picture.
Yes.
And you understand how the different pieces, there are different moving parts, but you understand how they fit together. And you know that if something happens on one side, well, it has ramifications in the whole structure. So you need to do something about it. And that is a skill that you only have when you have experience of all these areas.
I think that ties in quite well with the idea that even though a lot of people think tax and trust is quite a niche area of law, it can be broad in some sense, right? Because, like you mentioned,
Yes.
it cuts across all transactions. It's not just something that is isolated to one industry, to one kind of transaction. Just about everything that happens, there could be a tax impact. So
Yes, yes. I mean, well, tax affects everyone all over the world in whatever jurisdiction. And of course, our practice is cross-border. So our practice is not just limited to Singapore. I mean, we are lucky that, Singapore is used as a hub by clients from all over the world. So they need our help. But we cannot help them if we only know Singapore. I mean, they come to consult us about Singapore. But we also have to understand the global picture. And so the more experience we have, the more we learn about the global picture, and we learn about the client's tax issues in their home jurisdiction as well as in their other jurisdictions where they have assets, other jurisdictions where their family members are, for example, or maybe other jurisdictions where they plan to move in future. So all these issues will come in, and that's how we give them a holistic service.
Now, of course, we don't advise on the various jurisdictions. We don't provide, for example, Greek advice, American tax advice. We just provide Singapore advice. But it is important that we consider the other issues as well from different jurisdictions.
Correct. And if you've been doing this kind of work long enough, you will have a general familiarity with most of the main jurisdictions as well, not just Singapore. So at least you know enough to spot the issues that are likely to arise. And you know when you need help from specialist lawyers in that jurisdiction. So part of the way we help our clients is not just to give the advice ourselves. Of course we do that, but it's more than just that. It's also knowing when you need to consult other lawyers, and if so, who. So that is something which clients will appreciate you for. Because if you're not able to do that, I mean, if you don't have that familiarity, you won't be able to do that. And so we want to be not just lawyers advising clients in a specific area, but we want to be trusted advisors. And to be trusted advisors, you need the overall picture and the overall perspective.
I realize that in a lot of the matters that we do, quite often we are the team that leads and give direction to other councils on how to approach the matter, how to approach the
Yes,
issue.
yes. And we sometimes coordinate lawyers from many different jurisdictions. But we are the ones who are keeping track of the entire structure. So that if suddenly you get advice from country A saying, well, country A doesn't allow you to do that, you must do something else. We will then be able to say, oh, look, if we have to change the deal in this way, or if we have to change the structure in this way, that will have an effect on what's happening in country B.
Yes.
Then we will then go to the lawyer in country B and say, look, the lawyer in country A has said that we need to do this. How will that affect the structure in country B? And how will that affect the tax treatment in country B? And if the country B lawyer comes back and says, no, you can't do that, then we then have to go back to country A and say, look, we have this problem in country A, we have that problem in country B. How do we find a solution, right, that can cater to both? So that's the kind of work we do. And actually, that is the most interesting work we do, if you ask me. Right? That's the most interesting. And that's the most high value added as well. Because only a very experienced lawyer can do that.
That's true.
Someone who has worked with all these jurisdictions many times before, and therefore knows what the issues are.
For you, you describe it as interesting, right? You use the word interesting. But maybe to a lot of the listeners and a lot of us who will hear this and be like, wow, tax is already a complicated enough practice area. And on top of that, we have to consider country A, country B. And then we consider all the different permutations that could happen.
Yes.
A lot of us might think, wow, this is complicated, this is challenging, this is difficult. So we would love to understand, how is this interesting to you? You describe it as interesting and fun.
Yes. I never said it was easy.
Okay. That's a good point.
Well, to be perfectly cynical about it, if it was too easy, the client wouldn't need me.
It's true. That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
It may be difficult, and certainly would be difficult for people who don't have this experience. But that's the value that we bring to the table. But, okay, why do I find it interesting, right? Rather than describing it as difficult.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I think solving complicated problems is interesting, at least to me. I mean, people play all kinds of games, right? And a lot of those games are also to do with problem solving.
Yeah.
Right? So what I would say to that is, well, wouldn't you rather be paid to do all this problem solving yourself? You are paid to play games. Isn't that fun?
This is a game to you.
It is. It is a game to me.
So every day a new game comes along.
That's right.
Many
new games all the time. So, I mean, there's a common saying, right? I mean, if you enjoy what you are doing, you don't need to work a day in your life.
Do you feel like you're working? Or do you feel like this is all games and fun?
Okay, obviously not everything is fun, but I think a big part of our work is fun. A big part. And that's sufficient to keep me interested. And of course, that's something which I would recommend to all young lawyers.
Yes.
Enjoy your work, and you don't need to work a day in your life.
To a lot of young lawyers, I think it's like a myth to us, oh, find a job that you love and then, you don't have to work a day. It always feels like a myth because maybe starting out, it's very difficult and it's hard to find it fun, in all these complex legal issues that we deal with. But I see that, with years of experience, I guess it gets easier, and therefore that's when the fun comes in, and you manage to find something that has kept you going all these years.
And as you get better and better at it over the years, you actually find it more and more interesting.
Today you brought with us an item of interest to you. Could you give us a little explanation of what you have brought today?
Yeah. Well, there's a story behind this.
Okay.
if you look closely at what it is, can you identify what this is?
Well, maybe we can show this to our audience, but is this Angkor Wat?
Spot on. This is Angkor Wat. And of course, you're probably wondering how this is relevant to our work.
Yeah, it seems very distant.
I was approached by the government regulator in Cambodia, regulating the trust industry.
I see.
Now, I so happen to be the president of the Singapore Trustees Association. So they were planning a trip to Singapore to find out about the trust industry in Singapore. STA has no premises, and so I decided to host them in our office. So they came to our office, they met with us, there were a few of them, there were a few of us, and of course, this is a government delegation, so they brought a gift.
Wow.
And so this is it. And obviously, if you are the Cambodian government, what do you think you would give, right? You give Angkor Wat, right? Angkor Wat appears, by the way, in the Cambodian national flag.
Wow.
So that's why they made this gift. And I mean, it's again, I would say, well, not every lawyer receives official gifts from foreign governments.
For sure. This is quite rare. Wow, I think you must have been very honored when you received this gift.
It's true. I mean, if you visit the Istana, you will see all the official gifts that the president has received from foreign dignitaries and all that. So it's a bit similar, but I only have one. So
well, one is more than what most of us will have. So this is very impressive. So I can see why you brought along this item. Well, maybe we can talk about your capacity as the president of the Singapore Trustees Association. You actually founded this association.
Yes, I was one of the founders. So historically, I mean, for people who don't know much about the trust world, historically, almost all trusts were set up in offshore centers. So when I first started, hardly any trusts were set up in Singapore. I mean, there was no trust industry to speak of in Singapore. But towards maybe the late 90s, early 2000s, offshore centers came under pressure from the OECD, from the EU, from various bodies, because they thought that offshore centers were being used, to evade tax, for money laundering, all kinds of nasty things. And so offshore centers came under pressure. Some countries blacklisted them. So clients had to look for new jurisdictions, to set up their trusts and set up their structures. And of course, Singapore is a place that, we consider to be well regulated, legitimate, and so it was an obvious location, an obvious alternative to the offshore centers. So around that period, I think people realized that there was an opportunity for Singapore. I think the government started encouraging trust companies to be set up in Singapore. And as that happened, then of course we realized that, this is a new industry. It needs an industry association to represent it, right? So STA is like the Law Society for lawyers.
It
Right.
represents,
It represents the trustees in Singapore. Yeah. So in early 2000s, at that point, I was already advising some of these trust companies, and I was having a chat with one of the trust companies, and it was just a casual chat, and we were just thinking, this industry needs an association to represent it, because it's a new industry, it needs an association. And so the person I was talking to, whose name is Victoria Chan, so she was running one of the trust companies in Singapore, and she said, yeah, I agree, we need an association. Look, let's start it.
Wow. So that's how it came about.
That's how it came about. So we went to talk to MAS. We got MAS blessing
Okay.
because, well, obviously you need the blessing of the regulator because the regulator will be talking to this association. And as we are actually going to MAS and saying, look, we want to start this association. This will be the voice of the industry, right? And you are the regulator. And if you want to talk to the industry, you come and talk to us. And they agreed. MAS said yes. They agreed. The industry at that point didn't have an association to represent it. So MAS agreed, and that's what we did.
And now you are also the presiding president of the STA.
Yes. After a break.
After a break. So that's the end of the first part of our interview with Edmund. Stay tuned for the second part. See you.